All right, everyone. So here we go with the answers to Q&A. I chose like the top 25 questions. So I'm gonna do that here. And I wish I had my iPad, but Shalini took it last night because she wanted to use it. So I'm gonna have to like use a microscope to read it from my cell phone. Okay, so the first question that was asked the most was, are nakshatra applied in divisional charts? No. There are no nakshatras in divisional charts. Okay, the nakshatras are only applied in the D1 chart. That's it. There's no degrees, no nakshatras in divisional charts. So just look at the sign and houses and work with them in divisional charts. Trust me, you don't want to make Vedic astrology any more complicated than what it is. Question 2. Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in Virgo. What happens? Well, in the 7th Virgos, Jupiter and Saturn conjunction with Virgo in the 7th house. Okay. So Jupiter and Saturn are in the 7th house in Virgo. That means the 10th house is ruled by Jupiter, meaning Sagittarius. And Lord of the 10th house is in the 7th house with Saturn. What this represents is this: a person who is very disciplined regarding knowledge and learning. Okay, that's the first thing that you see, because Saturn is discipline, Jupiter is knowledge. And this person can also represent a lawyer and a judge, because Jupiter is law and Saturn is the judge. 7th house is courts. So when these two come together in Virgo, especially somebody who deals with long hours of working and paperwork and calculation, it signifies a judge and a lawyer. Okay, another thing that it can signify is biotech industry, by somebody who might be in a business of biotech. Okay, because Jupiter is biology also. It represents biology of life, and Saturn is technical jobs, mechanical jobs, so biotech. Okay, so that's that. Then we have okay, let's move on quickly. How do we see the first, second, and third marriage? Well, it's kind of a complicated task, but the first marriage is seen from the 7th house, second marriage is seen from the 2nd house, and third marriage is seen from the 9th house. Okay. Then importance of time of birth when reading a divisional charts, meaning Varga charts. How important is the time of birth? Is very important, because let's say if you think you're born between 10 and 10:15 or 10 and 10:30, and you always use your time as 10 o'clock, but let's say your divisional chart, the Namancha chart, the Dasamsha chart are changing by 10:10. Okay, so you really don't know which divisional chart to use. So in this confusion, you will only use your main birth chart, and that's it. Okay, or your Narani Bhavachalit chart, if your ascendant is not changing signs in that 30 minutes, because then too it will be a problem. But divisional charts change every 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So it's better to just go by the main birth chart if you do not know your time. However, a well-qualified astrologer will look at the divisional charts, the mantra chart. He's going to ask you questions, and once he asks you those questions, he's going to judge, okay, this is the actual Namancha chart, because it confirms what happened to you in this Namancha chart versus the other one. So that's how you will figure it out. Okay, next question. How to find nakshatras of each planet? That's easy. Whenever you get your birth horoscope, or when you go to my website, you buy my book, and I send you those 2 links to look at your KP coordinates and your astrology chart. In there, you will see a table on the side that will say planets and degrees. So Saturn at 15 degrees, you will see Saturn 50 degrees Taurus. I automatically know it's a Rohini nakshatra, but just go on Google and say nakshatra. The very first thing that's going to come up is Wikipedia in nakshatra. So all you do is look at the table of the nakshatra, match the degree that Saturn is at, and match it into that table. Oh, Saturn is in Chitra nakshatra, or Saturn is Revti nakshatra, depending upon what sign and degree it's in, and in the table. That's how you find out, very easy. Okay, some softwares even tell you which planet each nakshatra is supporting. And then we have, is Sun in the 11th house always bad? No, it's not. Only when Saturn is influencing the Sun, only that's when it's going to get bad results. But even then, most of the time, Sun will give good results as long as it's in the friendly sign and friendly nakshatra. I remember when I did the Sun in the 11th house video, and I was saying that because Saturn is always against it. Okay, so that foundation is always there. However, Sun will still become powerful and weak depending upon that. All it's about is Sun is able to fight Saturn in his own house or not, and that will determine if you will get good results from the Sun. But it really is about the struggle, though. Saturn in the 11th house, struggling and winning. Okay, let's see. Video on the 12th house, you would say you were going to do. Yes, I will do the video on the 12th house soon. All of it is coming up. I will do each house, video on each house. Okay, so don't worry about it. It's all going to come. Animal love and love for animals in Vedic astrology chart. How can you find out if somebody loves animal? Well, animals are represented by the 6th house. And in order to see that, you use the 6th house, Moon and Venus, and nakshatras that represents animals. Okay, so that's the quickest way to see. So whenever the 6th house, you have a planet sitting in the nakshatra of Moon or Venus, they're going to love animals. Anytime 6th Lord, it's somewhere in the house, sitting in the nakshatra of Venus or Moon, they're going to love animals. And if 6th Lord or planet in the 6th house is sitting in a nakshatra that represents an animal, like let's say Mriksha, it represents a deer head. Love for animal is there tremendously. Okay, there's all these other combinations too, but that's the quickest one. Addiction in astrology. Addiction is seen from the 2nd and 8th house mainly. Addiction for smoking, drugs, alcohol, because the 2nd house represents the intake of things. And Rahu, Mars, and Ketu are the judges of seeing if you're taking something addictive or not. Rahu represents addiction to smoking, addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol. Mars represents addiction to alcohol because remember, a soldier always carries that, whiskey with him. So you can see that 8th house also represents the addiction and how severe the addiction is. But like sexual addiction, paraphernalia or necrophiliacs or pedophiles is seen from the 7th house and the 12th house and the 8th house, that addiction. Okay. And actually I was thinking of doing the video on addiction, so we'll do that soon. All right, so the next questions. What does Atma Karka do in the divisional chart, and what does it called? Is there any term for it? Yes. When you have your Atma Karka, meaning the planet with the highest degree, in the Namansha chart, its placement is known as Karam Kanksha. Okay, it's especially used in Gemini astrology, Karam Kanksha. And that is actually another way of seeing your career through Karam Kanksha. So what you do is you look at the placement of the Atma Karka in the D9 chart, Namansha chart, and that tells you about your career. And then what you do is you take that placement of the Atma Karka in the Namansha chart and you put it exactly where it is in your birth chart. So if, let's say Mars is your Atma Karka in the 9th house in the D9 chart, you take that Mars, you put it in the 9th house in the D1 chart, that also gives you a good indication of what your career is, which we'll do a video on Karam Kanksha actually. There's several ways to look at careers, okay, so we'll do that. Why not tell about your guru and your uncle, Tueson, who taught you astrology? Well, the thing is, I'm a very private person, and if I advertise my uncle, which I could easily, the thing is, it'll just be me giving away my private life, my family, and all of that, and I'm just a very private person. This is why I don't do it. But like my uncle has studied Vedic astrology for 40 years. So the moment I was born, I was around. Whenever I saw him, he would have these charts with him, which didn't make any sense to me until like 23, 22, when he came to United States in 2003, and then for my sister's wedding, and then he was here, and that's when I just opened the box of Pandora with him and started learning all this. So majority of them has came from him, learning from him, books, seminars, all of these things have been my guru. Reading K. N. Rao books, amazing astrologer. From him I learned a lot, And so all these different methods have been my teachers and gurus, you can say. What does it mean to have Venus and Moon conjunction? It really makes a person clever. Venus and Moon conjunction makes a person very cunning and clever most of the time. And you guys might think it's a very positive conjunction. Yes, it's a very positive conjunction for somebody who may, who wants to go around people, who wants to take advantage of people. That usually, because these two planets are really not friends. People think they are benefit planets, so they do well together. Not really, no. But, if there's a positive influence on them, they'll do good. Like Jupiter's influence on these two planets, it'll decrease their tendency to cheat people. What are the combination of becoming a lawyer? The combination of becoming a lawyer are the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, no, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 9th house. 5th house, academic education. You need to have a higher education. You're a law school, and then you gotta take your LSATs after your bachelor's degree, go to law school, pass your bar exam, requires brain, okay? And one hell of a boring discipline. Because, man, I've read it's like law books, and man, it's just such tedious work, I can't tell you. And law, the planets that represents law is Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury. Jupiter is the one who writes the law, Saturn is the one who implements the law, and Mercury is the mediator, meaning the lawyer, who communicates between the defendant and the jury and the judge. Okay, so these combinations are main significators of law career. If Sun comes into play, that shows a government job, like a law career with the government. Mars, Ketu, and Venus conjunction in Leo in the 5th house. What does it mean? It means somebody who's very impulsive when it comes to love. They are always bouncing from one relationship to the other. Why? Because Mars and Ketu are very impulsive planets. Ketu is a shadow of Mars. And Mars is a very action-oriented planet. It just wants to take action. And Ketu takes action without even thinking, because it doesn't have a head to think. And when they come with Venus, who represents relationship and love, in the 5th house of relationship and love and creativity and children, they're very impulsive towards these things. They'll jump from, they find somebody for 2 minutes and they already say, I love you. And then maybe after a week, they're like, oh, what did I do? And they choose like wrong majors for their career, because academic education is seen from the 5th house. So it can represent these things. It can represent falling in love with people of different culture also. Okay. Let's see. How do you find accurate time of birth if you do not know what time you were born? Well, a well-qualified astrologer will ask you 3 questions. What's your favorite fruit, color, and number? And based on that, they'll look in this book and they'll look at the chart and they'll be able to tell you, okay, you were born at this time. So there's a method of finding your time of birth, the accurate time of birth. And they have done these studies where people knew their time of birth, but they went ahead and did these tests and they were proven 100% accurate. So yeah, ancient science is an awesome science. Jupiter Mars conjunction in the 2nd house. What does it mean? It means somebody who gives wisdom, and who gives wisdom with black and white mythology, meaning that Jupiter is wisdom and 2nd house is speech and Jupiter is knowledge. So these guys are one of those public speakers who, if Jupiter was there alone, there will be very spiritual public speakers who say, you know what, spirituality is this and everything, and you can find spirituality here. When Mars comes into play, it's a very dynamic spiritual speaker, meaning that they will say, okay guys, this is it, I know the answer, you do this, you go to heaven, you do this, you go to hell. They become very authoritative towards giving that conclusion to you. They say, follow this and this is it, my way is the only way to do it. So it becomes very those confident, dynamic public speakers. Okay, let's see, I have enough time. Why people with spiritual yogas do not lead the spiritual life? Well, that's simple. If you look at the Narani Bhavchalit chart, and if one planet moves from that yoga that is forming for the spiritual life, it's not going to come to fruition. This is why Narani Bhavchalit chart is important to see if that yoga is really manifesting. This is why your Raj Yoga and Dhan Yoga that is happening in the main chart is not happening in the divisional chart. It's not going to come to fruition, because the true degrees of the planets in the KP system is showing that, hey, the other planet has not moved. It's still in the other house, while in the D1 chart, it's showing that thing. And remember, in the D1 chart, you will always use the meaning of conjunction. Like, what is this conjunction doing? And the aspects. But the dasha, the fruition of the dasha, and what houses they're implying in the dasha time shows from the NBC chart. Okay, but usually why Raj yogas and Dhan yogas do not come to play is when you look at your main birth chart and your divisional charts and that conjunction is no longer there, it shows a very weak conjunction. Okay, so the last question is, how many type of astrologies are out there? Are there different methods of astrology in India? Yes, there are about 4 types of astrology. One is Parashara Shastra, second is Gemini astrology, third is Bhrigu Nadi astrology, fourth is Nadi astrology, the leaf in South India, and the fifth one is the KP astrology, the coordinate system. Parashara is what I try to teach you guys along with the KP, where the coordinates. Okay, so Parashara, and then there's Gemini astrology, which uses the sign aspects and sign placement instead of the planets, and they use the 7 karkas as the most important part of the astrology system. They use things like Charadhasha instead of Vimoshtari Dhasha. Charadhasha is based on, like, you're learning through instead of running through a Jupiter Dhasha, in Gemini you run through the Dhasha of Aquarius or Scorpio or, you know, Gemini. And then there's Bhrigu Nadi Jyotish, written by Rishi Bhrigu, where Saturn and Jupiter hold the most important placement, other than more than anything else, because these 2 planets change signs very slowly, like 1 year and 2.5 years for Saturn. And in Bhrigu Nadi, Saturn changes sign every 12 years and Jupiter changes sign every 7 years. And because of this, they're able to tell you majority of the things that will happen in your life, because if you do not have your time of birth, it kind of becomes difficult to predict. But because of Bhrigu Nadi system, you're able to predict this thing. Nadi astrology is, if you go to South India, you tell them their time of birth, place of birth, they look at these leaves and they have your whole life into it. Some people say it's a scam. Most people have made videos on it on YouTube saying it's a scam. Some people say it works. I haven't tried it, so I can't really give you my honest answer on that. Once I do, I will. And then lastly is that KP astrology that I teach you guys also with the coordinates. Like if you're running through the Dhasha and it shows the coordinates of 2, 7, 11, meaning that you will get married. Because second is family, 7th is signifying marriage, and 11th is signifying your hopes and wishes to come true. So the KP astrology is another method of doing it. All right, so guys, this was my answer to your Q&A questions. I will see you soon with another video. God, thank you. Bye-bye.